I've been brokenhearted lately because two of my spiritual heroes have had to step out of ministry due to adultery and allegations, some spanning decades of inappropriate behavior. And both of these ministers have incredible teaching, but there were areas of compromise that is seemingly destroying everything that they work so hard to build. And I think that this is a wake-up call for the church, for people in ministry, that Satan is seeking to take out God's servants through all sorts of immorality. But there are ways that we can avoid this. And Hebrews 12:1 has the key. It says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us." This verse reminds me of 1 Corinthians 9:27, where Paul says, "I discipline my body like an athlete, training it to do what it should. Otherwise, I fear that after preaching to others, I myself might be disqualified." So in our life, we have to know ourselves well and know what our weaknesses are. And I think the mistake that people make is they only focus on the quote unquote big sins and say, "Oh, I'm never going to do that." But they don't think about all the steps leading up to that sin. And I believe that that's what Hebrews 12:1 is talking about. Before you get to sin, you're going to have weights that are slowing you down that eventually lead to sin. And Paul himself recognized that it was possible for him, even the great apostle Paul, to preach to others yet himself be disqualified. So he was constantly disciplining himself and his own urges and putting them in subjection. And I think the lie that Satan tells us is that you can get really close to sin and you won't step over that line. But the Bible also warns that we can be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. So anytime you find yourself doing something that in the past you would have told somebody else was wrong, and you're making excuses for it, you're hiding things, and you're even trying to rationalize within yourself, that should be a red flag. I know a lot of people have said bad things about Billy Graham and the very strict rules he had for himself, but he completely avoided scandals because he would not be alone with women that were not his wife. Song of Solomon 2:15 says, "Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards." So ask yourself today, and if you're not sure, ask the Lord, are there any little foxes that I've allowed into my life? Things that maybe don't yet qualify as outright sin, but it's unwise and it could lead to sin. Are there relationships in your life that are tempting you towards sin? Are there situations or places that you're showing up to that's kind of right on that edge and that could lead to the wrong direction? You want to ask yourself these questions now, not years later after you've had a terrible public moral downfall or after your family has been destroyed, because that is happening so often, and Satan is hoping that we'll think that it can't happen to us. I pray that we'll all have the testimony of 2 Timothy 4:7-8, which Paul said at the end of his life. He said, "I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearance."